The Canadian Football League, Canada's oldest sports league. A league made by Canadians for Canadians. For over 100 years, Canadian football players have battled it out on the gridiron across the country for a chance to hoist North America's oldest trophy, the Grey Cup. Many legends have hosted that great trophy, from Jim Young to Tony Gabriel, Louis Pasagula, Ben Calhoun to Jason Claremont. Some stars, some unsung heroes. It's the Canadians that play this great game that make the CFL what it is. These are their stories. This is CFL Storied. Many Canadians have played in the CFL, but only a couple from Vancouver have played in the CFL, let alone have won a Grey Cup. Zander Robinson is one of those guys. A 5-year CFL veteran, Grey Cup champion, and now aspiring medical student. Zander grew up in Vancouver in the neighborhood of Kerrisdale, a place where no one thinks professional football when they are kids. But Zander remembers when he realized he wanted to play football.
So I was watching a friend's older brother play. I was in elementary school, he was in high school. And it turned out that he was going to VC, so I watched the game. I really liked it, and I was playing all these other sports at the same time, and just what's one more sport? Ended up going to VC because that friend of mine went to VC. We both joined the football team at the same time, and the rest kind of, just transitioned into me playing throughout the rest of high school.
Zander, who played multiple sports in high school, became a star football player at Vancouver College, the only football program in the city. He soon started realizing that he might be able to play football past high school.
Well, I don't think I ever really had an idea of a scholarship or anything like that, but the seed was planted by one of my coaches in grade 11, I think, in the 50,000th time hitting the bag, and the coach was like, hey, you know what, you're actually getting pretty good at this. So maybe a little bit of a seed was planted there, and then the next year I ended up being on the provincial team, or named to the provincial team. We didn't actually play any games, but I think once you're on that list, coaches at least locally started contacting me, and then perhaps the list made its way east. Got a few phone calls from some of the universities out there, and then I ended up doing a couple of recruiting trips.
Yes, Zander took many recruiting trips and soon after decided he wanted to play football and attend the University of Western Ontario in London, Ontario. Not only one of the most prestigious schools in Canada, but one of the most prestigious football programs in the country as well. He arrived at Western in the fall of 2007, but soon realized he'd have to wait his turn to play. But with hard work, his university football career started to take off, and a new opportunity was on the horizon.
I didn't even get any playing time my freshman year, which was, going from playing a lot in high school to playing none, which is definitely disappointing. But, as time went on, and I actually got in because of an injury in my third and fourth year, I'd never had any aspiration or thought that I'd be playing in the CFL, but my last year, things went really well, named OUA or something like that. So I got OUA All-Star, and so I got invited to the Combine, and you know what, I just had a good weekend, and I didn't lose a one-on-one, and that sort of kind of, cannonballed me into some of the coaches and the GM's thought processes about somebody to talk to about potentially joining the team.
Zander went to the CFL Combine, where draft-eligible players go to show their skills and get interviewed by potential employers. Not knowing at the time, it would be his interview with the Toronto Argonauts coaches that would seal his future as a Canadian football player.
So Osh, the head coach of the Bombers now, asked me the question of when was the last fight, or first he asked, have you ever been in a fight? And I answered yes. And then he asked me, so when was the last fight you were in? And I'm not like an overly violent person, but I'd had a friend get jumped at a bar, and it ended up being myself and these three characters, and I somehow ended up coming out on top. And I told them about that, and I think there was a little bit of a smile, and I think perhaps that's what solidified my selection.
The Toronto Argos would go on to draft Zander 22nd overall in the 2011 CFL draft. He was now a professional athlete, and the real work was set to begin with his first training camp in the CFL.
You're definitely nervous, and there's almost like this air of the number of guys that they invite there, half are going to be gone, and it's just like, people don't even bother to get to know you at that point. It's just kind of like they judge you on the first couple of days. This is players and coaches are like, he's dead weight, he's going to be gone. So it's almost like you don't even learn their name, and it's savage, but it is the business.
Zander would go on to make the team, but his rookie season was nothing close to perfect. The Argos had pressure to do well. They had a winning season the year before, and as the 100th Grey Cup in Toronto was on the horizon, the pressure got to them, and the 2011 season was one of the worst Argos seasons of that decade.
It was like the 99th year, the 100th Grey Cup was coming up. We had this, essentially the Canadian version of Hard Knocks, which we killed in the first year. Killed in the sense that it never came back because it was so bad over at Toronto. It was, we were 6-12. People hate losing. It's a sport where, and it's a job where you're required to win. So attendance was dropping. People were getting nervous. We had the starting quarterback who, you know, he just was unhappy with what was going on in the situation that was in Toronto. He totally packed it in. He got in his car midway through the season, halfway through the year, and just drove back to Florida. Didn't say a word to anybody. That's the kind of year that it was. And so you've got people losing, you got people getting cut, people's livelihoods are on the line, families are in jeopardy, food is not going to be on the table, coaches are losing it, coaches are snapping, their nerves are frayed because they're wondering if the chopping block is hanging over their head. The GM and coach is Jim Bark at the same time, so he's judge, jury, and executioner. He starts getting whiny. It was a gong show of a year, and I'm honestly just happy that we survived it, because as it got close to the end of the year, you weren't playing for a playoff spot, you were playing for your job.
After that season, the Argos made some changes. Jim Barker, who was the GM and coach, stepped down and was replaced by former NFLer and offensive coordinator of the Montreal Alouettes, Scott Milanovich. Not only that, they traded for one of the best CFL quarterbacks at the time, two-time Grey Cup champion Ricky Ray. Little did they know that 2012 season would be one to remember.
As much as football is a team game, it's such a big chunk of it is how successful your quarterback can be. And you know what, like Ricky is one of the all-time greats in this league, and he's probably the best guy to ever throw the corner route that I've ever seen. He'll drop it into cover two and no problem. It's ridiculous. But the fact that you can have a quarterback that can win games and one that can gunsling and one that can, you know, the number of times that the ball changes hands in the Canadian game in the last quarter is insane. So, you know, obviously with that 3 downs and the opportunities that Ricky was given to come back and win games, compounded with the fact that, yeah, we were 9-9 on the season and we kind of won out at the end and we got hot at the right time. Guys came back from injury and we just kind of hit playoffs in stride. And I think that's, you know, a huge chunk of winning seasons, you know, winning championships is just hitting your stride at the right time.
The Argos won the last 2 games of the season to make the playoffs and had a home game against the Edmonton Eskimos in the East semifinals. They beat them handedly, which set up a matchup to go to the Grey Cup against the number 1 team in the league, the Montreal Alouettes.
So the guys and I have discussed this many, many times, you know, looking back on it, and this is only in reflection, mind you, but the Alouettes game, that was kind of our Grey Cup, I think, is kind of what the consensus was, is the fact that you had this game that the possession changed many times, the lead was changed many times, the game was close, there was a fumble in the 4th. It was just like a very tense and exciting game. You're going into enemy territory, so to speak. They had Montreal had filled up their old Olympic Stadium. It was jammed. It was loud, and like there was just, you know, something, you know, air was crackling, that sort of thing. But we felt, you know, and this is looking back, like I said, but we felt that really that Montreal game where we were able to pull through, that was really what would kind of leapt us into the championship.
They now were on their way to the 100th Grey Cup that we played in Toronto. That game wasn't even a contest, beating up on the Calgary Stampeders and hoisting the Grey Cup. Xander reflected on what that experience was like.
It was amazing because I had my mom, my dad, and my sister were in the stands behind us. We had a full week of kind of just, you know, other than the fact that you're focused and you're putting in long days in the film room and going over plays and studying and just getting ready for the game itself, and then to have it all culminate and finish and to win and to have friends, family there, and just to be able to celebrate the fact that, you know, like I'd never won a championship before in my football career, and now here was my first one, the 100th one in this game, in this city that I play for.
After that Grey Cup, Xander played 3 more seasons with the Argos, signing a new contract with a pay raise. But in the preseason of 2015, while playing the Blue Bombers, a low hit ended his 2015 campaign, which was the last year of his contract.
It was just unfortunate because essentially the defense was running like a cloud coverage and staying flat, and one of the guys ran the wrong route on our team. And so that left the safety just sitting as I ran out to him. And you would have to look at it to make up your own mind on this. However, I was in a bit of a defenseless position. I don't think there was any need to go low. And I didn't ever hear word from him, so I'm still a little bit, maybe a little bit of a grudge is still held there in that sense. But yeah, like I was just taken out right at the knee, and I felt my knee go, both my M and my ACL, and that was the year.
After the 2015 season, Zander was fully healed, but didn't know if he wanted to play football or pursue a career in medicine.
I was undecided at that point, so free agency had come around, and it seems ridiculous to not sign with the team if you're still potentially going to go play. So I signed with Edmonton, and then I ended up calling the coach, Jason Moss, and saying, this was a couple months later, that I had decided that I'm going to be trying to pursue a career in medicine. So I'd been studying for the MCAT. I wrote that shortly afterwards, and now I'm kind of still in the process of trying to get into a school in Canada or elsewhere.
Zander is now waiting to hear back from a number of schools, but I asked him, what has he learned in football that he's taken with him now in the real world?
I think that, sports is like sport itself, whichever sport it might be, and I think perhaps it has to be a team sport. It kind of, and as corny, cliche, whatever as it sounds, is it teaches you how to function within a team and towards a goal. And I think that, whether if you're in real estate or something and you're working towards selling this building, whatever it might be, there's kind of that, it's been ingrained in you to be goal directed. Same with, and like, it's almost military-like in the sense that if you're not 5 minutes early to a meeting, you're late. And I think that people in the real world, this world here of employers and such, they appreciate people being on time, being punctual. And I think that once they know that you played as a part of a team, not just, your elementary school soccer team, that everybody does, but that you actually, dedicated yourself towards something, I think that shows to an employer maybe a bit of strength of character.
And finally, I asked Zander, would he do anything different? And the answer is what I expected.
Good last question. I don't think I would. I think that I was happy to take. You know what? When I got the break in my 4th year of university, and I got that ability to go. I'm probably I'm happy that I did it. I'm happy that I pursued it.
Like Zander, many Canadian football players come and go in this league without anyone hearing their stories, and not many of them regret it. This is CFL Storied.